Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of College Knowledge. I'm your co-host, Joe Kerins, alongside my partner, Dave, the CEO. Always good to be with you. Always good to see you, sir.
Joe, the college pro, looking forward to our conversations as always. A lot of action going on in college right now. Tis the season, right?
Man, it seems like we say it every year this time.
Well, listen, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Acceptance letters, financial aid letters, everything's coming out. People are stressing, trying to figure out. And then I find it funny this time of year that the decision-making process is hard for people.
Yeah. And try and prep them as much as you can.
But,
right?
Well, I've got this and this, and I could go here for that. And
yeah. I'm like, yeah, well, what about the other 5 schools you applied to?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't heard anything. Well, you got to wait.
Like, you got to let it all play out before you jump.
Yeah, don't jump. I know it's stressful. College is the hurry up and wait. Like, you hurry up, you get everything in, then you wait. Then they send a decision. They want you to make a decision right away. May 1st, your decision deadline.
Yeah.
Schools will, let's just say, sometimes I've seen times where they try and use scare tactics. Hey, if you want a parking lot or a parking spot, you got to commit now. You got until Friday.
I've also seen, last year, Syracuse, that whole debacle with their financial aid was you got to be patient.
Yeah. Be patient. Whale. I think the best analogy I've always made is, look, you got a lot of cards that haven't been dealt yet.
Yeah.
You don't know what they are. Wait till everything's on the table and then play the best hand.
And I think for every family that I've worked with, at some point or another, I say, listen, we're in. College is happening. Like, take a pill.
Yeah.
Let's slow it down. Let's wait to see what the numbers dictate, right?
Yeah. So Dave, we got a great guest. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about our wonderful guest that we'll be talking to today?
So we'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Marybeth Gasman. She is the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Endowed Chair in Education and Distinguished Professor of Educational Psychology at the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University. Dr. Gasman, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And to give a background, she's got a PhD in higher education from IU, Big school right now, big deal. Master's in higher education from IU as well, and then has a BA in political science from Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin. So welcome to the show. Give us a little background as to how you got into higher education, what led you to it, and we'll try and take it organically from there.
Sure. Well, I have a fairly non-traditional background for a faculty member. Most faculty come from fairly well-educated families, and I came from a family where my parents have very little education. And but education, when I was a young person, I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. In a very, very cold area. I am a Youper.
All right.
Yep. And education sounded like freedom. And so I early on, some of my teachers noticed that I was a really good writer and encouraged me to go to college. That's really the main way that I ended up going to college. And as I was in college, I loved learning and I loved answering complex questions. And I got interested in higher education because I was doing all these things related to higher education as an undergrad, and the dean of students told me, you can have a whole career in this area, which I didn't know. And so I ended up getting very interested in studying how higher education works and all the complexities of it. And I think, at my core, I'm interested in opportunity. I by just luck was given opportunity that someone happened to notice that I was smart. And if that hadn't happened, I don't know what I would do, because I had a guidance counselor be very impressed with my 130 words a minute typing, wanting me to be a secretary. So,
well, it's interesting too, because we've interviewed a lot of guests. And in every episode, there's always this point, and it doesn't matter who we talk to, whether they're a professor, dean of admissions, whether they're in the business force, whatever, there's a mentor conversation.
Yes.
And the reality comes up that mentors, they come in different sizes, different shapes, different forms, but they encourage you to do something that you hadn't thought of. They encourage you to persist in some way that you hadn't thought you could, or they push you through to a maybe it's a thought pattern that you might not have had. And everybody at some point or another has thanked on this show a mentor that they had previously. And so I love the fact that mentorship played in your success as well.
Yeah.
The interesting part of what you said to me is you had a person who realized you were smart and pushed you, and you had a guidance counselor who realized you could type a lot and said you should do this, right?
Yes.
And I'm not here to pick on guidance counselors. It's not my role.
Yeah.
But they have a job with a lot of people, and they have to they try and sort and deliver. And so you have to, and I look at it in terms of self-advocacy, right? You have to find that person that gives you better direction if you don't like the direction someone's pushing you. And so I always look at, like, I have to be my own champion. And if I learn to be my own champion with the instruction of good people around me, if I can find good advice and I can champion for myself, I can find that success, right? And so in mentorship, the point I'm trying to make to everyone is, like, it's not just your typical person that'll be your mentor. It could be a person you meet along the way that drops a line that just sticks to your brain, and you're like, what did they mean? What was that about? And they go with it. So
Yeah,
love that.
I wanted to touch on the.
together.
No, sorry, the luck factor that you mentioned, and the idea of finding a mentor. Like, I don't know the whole story. If, like, you had some type of relationship with did the dean just come up to you at one point and say, "Hey, you've got this," but was there a relationship there? Would be one follow-up question. But the idea of networking, I think there's a lot of people that feel like they get lucky, and they don't realize that networking is like luck favors the prepared. Luck does favor the hard worker. When you are constantly out there interacting with people, there comes a time where, I know it happens to me, hey, we need someone for this, or, hey, do you know anybody along these lines? And you go, oh, I was just talking with John last week. He'd be perfect for that
Yep.
role. The idea of staying active and networking, I know that's another thing that we've always talked about, especially in college. It's huge. That's where things happen, and it may feel like luck, but believe it or not, it's the idea of interacting with others, telling them what you're about, right? And that it doesn't need to be like a business networking
Correct.
piece. I think that's also huge, because that's where leads to good things. Some people look at it luck, like, well, how often were you interacting with, like, all these people and having good conversations and making good relationships? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I did that every day. Okay, well, that wasn't luck. That was hard work.
Yeah.
So just something else. So I don't know what your story was, how the dean ends up coming up to it. That was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah, I'll respond to kind of both of those things. When I was in high school, there was this English teacher named Mr. Fix, totally different than anybody I'd ever met. I mean, this was a Hulk Hogan, muscle-bound, loving English teacher teaching Hemingway
Yeah.
and I was captivated by this kind of mess of personality that he had. And I was very attentive in class and did really well. And he plucked me out and said, "You have what it takes." And I want to say something. His name is Mr. Fix. I always tell people he fixed me, because he all through college he told me, you can call me anytime. And I did. And I sent him a letter when I became a full professor. He just passed away a couple years ago, but he was fundamental in my life as somebody who I always knew was there to support me, because my parents could support me emotionally, but they could not support me intellectually. So,
Mhm.
and he could. So that's one thing. And then that dean in my undergrad at St. Norbert, I he noticed that I was I was a leader, and I didn't even realize I was a leader until he said, "And you're really leading in all these areas." And he said to me, "Would you like to have an internship?" I didn't even know what that was. I mean, my mom has an eighth grade education and my dad graduated from high school, but that's all, my siblings had not gone to college. And so I got this internship and then he noticed me. He gave me challenging tasks and then said, you should go to IU where I went. Go to Indiana University. They can really cultivate this. And I felt noticed, and that really makes a difference. And
Hmm.
I do think for me, because I did grow up so poor, there was a certain amount of luck in meeting that wrestling fan. But on the other hand, I want to co-sign something you both said. I tell students every single day, nurture your relationships. It is those relationships that will sustain you during the rough periods and soar with you when you're doing really well. And you
Hmm.
Yeah.
got to nurture them and you got to make sure that you talk to your mentors and follow up with your mentors and ask your mentors how they're doing, right? And really nurture those relationships because they will take you so far. And I mean, I have my mentors to this day, all my mentors, I cherish them. And I
Hmm.
tell my daughter the same thing. I tell all my students that too. It's really important.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, you made a point about like the business networking. Like
Hmm.
you go into the trade show room and everybody's got a name tag and you introduce yourself. Like, and there's this place for that. I'm not
Yeah.
discrediting that. But when we talk about mentorship at a young age, it is learning how to interact at a level with someone that you're not entirely familiar with, but
Hmm.
you're intrigued by. Having the intestinal fortitude to stay after class and ask that professor a question because they hit home with you on something, or you know, it could even be going with your friend who invited you to a thing that you're not entirely comfortable about.
Yeah.
You don't know anybody there, but you meet someone in that moment that you strike up a conversation. The conversation goes in a direction, and all of a sudden you're having a positive interaction with someone, and it might not be that next day, it might not be that next week, it might be a month later,
Hmm.
where it can cultivate into something. And so, one of the fears I have, and I'd love your perspective on this, Dr. Gassman, social media
Hmm.
and texting and the TikTok and the Snapchat and the communication that exists now negates some of those soft skills of just having a pleasant conversation with someone and being able to do that networking. Do you find that on the college campus it's having an impact?
I absolutely think it's having an impact. Although I will say that it depends on the age of the student. So I'll just give you an example. Some students are just getting all of their information from social media, and I'm not against getting some information. There's some good information out there, but we have to teach students to be critical thinkers, to
Without question.
ask critical questions of what they're seeing. But there's another group of students, which is really interesting. They tend to be a little bit older and they are trying to find ways to kind of remove themselves from all of that noise that's coming in and talk to each other and interact without phones and without social media. Not all the time, just occasionally, right? And
Where's
like
that I don't mean to interrupt, but where's that crossover? Is that a maturity thing that happens? Like we talk a lot about like
Mhm.
we're asking kids to make very mature decisions at a very young age. The frontal cortex isn't even developed to the point where they could
You
make
are
these
right.
critical decisions, right?
Yeah.
Is it at that breakover point? Is it at that grad school level? Is it at the senior year level when this starts to happen?
It is. It's right around that time. And I mean, I saw this in my daughter has never been like really obsessed with social media, but a normal
Yeah,
use of it. But I have to say that I noticed that she and her friend group, and she's like around that like master's level,
sure.
and she and her friend group, I said, I noticed that you all aren't on your phones that much. And she said, oh yeah, when we go out to dinner, we're not on our phones. We're talking to each other. We're engaging each other when we place our phones far away from us when we're doing our work or whatever they do. You know, they've
Mm.
got all different kinds of jobs in this group. And she's like, we place our phones far away so that it doesn't distract us. And we also take apps off our phones if we find that we're looking at them too much. And I actually think that that is very healthy to learn how to gauge your interaction with something that might not be doing much for you, right? Because think about how much time people, and I, not just young people, but
Yeah.
there are lots of seniors and all kinds of people, right? Spending inordinate amounts of time on social media. And then you have to say to yourself, what could I be doing that could actually better my life during that time? And I think some young people are starting to think about that and they're pulling back a little bit and saying, I want to accomplish more. I want to do more. I want to actually experience life rather than watching other people.
Yeah,
And that's powerful to me.
it is, and I think it's a huge learning thing. It's crazy to think about it that, like, I remember picking up and having to call someone. We had landlines only, right? And you call, and then their mom would pick up, and you'd say, "Hi, Mrs. Kozak. This is David. Is Jonathan available or whatever?" And like, you had to learn those interactions very early, and
You do.
it's interesting that it's been pushed, but it is still coming through and cultivating that way. Um, the I look at and I'm just I have time limits. I actually got to the point where I had to put time limits not only on social media applications, but on news applications and everything, because I found myself neck deep in a research story trying to validate information I was reading, and then I'm in 7 different sources, and then 45 minutes later I pick up and I go, "What? I don't even care about this." Like it just happened to be a
Yeah.
boredom buster,
Mhm.
and then I got deep, and then I wasted 45 minutes when I was looking for a 5 minute just break from something.
Yeah.
So I have 15-minute limits on everything, and there's a discipline that even as a mature adult with I got 4 kids, like I've got stuff going on. It's the discipline to actually adhere to the time limit that I set.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
made a decision that I'm only 15 minutes on Instagram or 15 minutes on Facebook, and then you can override it, right? You have to say ignore the limit, and then it asks you for like another 15 or what do you want? And I found it even hard at that point to stick to my guns. And so right now I'm working on the discipline of I've already exhausted it. I told my smarter, more intelligent previous self told my future self, you're going to give it 15 minutes and then you're going to be off because there's no benefit coming to you. You've got other stuff to do. And so that discipline stuff,
Not an easy one. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a something that I think is actually, if you're gonna be on social media, hop on a treadmill. You know, hop on a treadmill and be on the treadmill, get some exercise, and get your social media fix and get off. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because at least you're doing something good for yourself
Sure.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
while you're
Love
watching
that.
it.
So, you know what? I just have a quick question, and I don't know if you have this answer, but it's always one I like to ask, because we talk to students just because we were talking about social media, making sure that your footprint is clean, especially as a high school senior headed into college.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything where it's like that's real? Like schools can look at your social media accounts, like be careful with what you're posting or what you're putting out into the.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is completely real. And I think that it's real for jobs, it's real for graduate programs, it's real for undergrads, especially if they present themselves as being all that, right? Sometimes people are gonna look and that's real. And I think, yeah, it should be clean. It should be I advise people to be positive on their social media. That's not to say that I wouldn't say to be yourself, meaning if you're an activist and you're advocating for something, that's okay, but just always remember you have to deal with the ramifications of your actions, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And at this point in our world, everything is controversial. I mean, literally everything is
Yeah.
controversial.
Yeah.
So you have to think about whatever you post, say to yourself, am I comfortable with the ramifications of my post?
Yeah.
So
When I think
and,
it's interesting,
that's how I do it.
it's interesting too, because it's not just like, hey, I've got all my settings where I want them and like the privacy is there. The other person, the screenshot capabilities,
Yes.
the
Mhm.
like you once it goes, whether they're a great friend of yours or and this is the problem I see with the social media piece is like
Right.
you all have acquaintances that
Hmm.
you friended on Facebook or you friended on
Right.
Instagram that you follow that they're just acquaintances and you but their stuff shows up in your feed. And so you may have said something that you really meant for your close group
Right.
and you put it out to the general populace and
Hmm.
someone grabs it and, off to the races, cancel culture kicks in and like,
It
you're in defense mode.
It does. And I'll tell you something, I worked with an executive coach like about a decade ago who was just amazing person. And she told me something that everybody should know. And I didn't know this, but she said, when when something happens to you, like what you just said, the someone takes a screenshot of what you thought was private, all of that, or like one of your major secrets that you only share with close friends, when that gets out, it's a close friend. And she
Hmm.
said, when corporations go down, it's always someone close. It when Because she coaches corporate leaders, and she said it's always someone close. It's not an outsider. It's someone close. And it's interesting because I mentioned my mom has an eighth grade education, but she told me something so profound when I was a kid. She said, keep your friends circle small and don't tell your secrets to everyone. And I didn't even know what that meant.
Hmm.
But I think that's some of the best advice is you don't need to tell everybody everything. And just keep in mind that the people that you surround yourself with, you really, really have to trust them. I don't know if you all heard, but when Taylor Swift was doing her kind of blitz on her new album, somebody was interviewing her and they asked her, do her friends leak information? And she said, none of my close friends would ever leak anything, right? Ever. She just said it with full confidence, and I thought, wow, like none of my close friends will leak anything ever. I think it's important to know that, and as a young person, you don't know who to trust. You don't know, and it can be detrimental to the rest of your life. And so
Yeah.
I go back to my mom's advice. I think that's good advice, and that executive coach, just keep that friend circle small.
Yeah, and this is not to say don't make friends, right?
Yeah,
That's not
no,
what we're
not at
saying at
all,
all.
not at
What
all.
what we're saying is there's a difference between an acquaintance. There's a
Yeah.
difference between someone you have fun with. There's difference between someone who is a friend, and then
Yes.
there's difference between someone who's a confidant, a and I don't mean to use the war analogy, but who do you want in the foxhole next to you type
Yes.
analogy, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
that's the who would value you the same way you would value them. And we talk a lot in my house with my children about reciprocity, right? A true friendship has reciprocity. They
Yes.
would do for
Yeah.
you what you would do for them. And
Hmm.
Right.
this is something that is it's a hard lesson to learn. But when you learn it, it usually stings, right? Because you usually learned it from an experience that
Yeah.
wasn't entirely positive, right?
Yeah, and most of us learn something like that throughout our life in some way or shape or form, even before social media.
Yeah,
We
Hmm.
might
correct.
have we might have told somebody something and then they told someone else. And another thing I tell students is if people gossip to you, they're gossiping about you.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's without question.
So, and it took me a long time to realize that. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, but that I always share these kinds of things with my students because you don't always get those little kind of truisms when
Yeah.
you're going through life, and I think they're really important.
So, hot topic right
Yeah,
now in higher education, and you're in higher education, you're in
yeah,
graduate education,
yeah.
is the advent of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And, um, I did a little fun thing with Chat GPT a few weeks back where I said, "Do you tell me what I want to hear?" was my prompt to it.
Oh, what a good question, right?
And it said basically, if you lead me down a path to validate something that you have a bias in, I will confirm your bias and
Yeah,
I will tell you what you want to hear, essentially.
yeah,
If you tell me not to do that, but to
yeah.
give you the plain, so how do you guys deal, number one, with leaning into, leaning away from, or embracing um, AI in graduate programs? And where do you see that as in its place in education?
Okay, so this is like such a good question, and I've been writing quite a bit about this lately. So I'll say a couple things. One, across higher education, like among faculty, regardless of who they're teaching, undergrad, grad, doc students, uh, there are total disagreements. Okay, like people are. There are some people who are absolutely against AI. There are some people who are totally embracing it, and then there are people along a spectrum of engaging.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'll tell you what I feel and what I've been doing with my students is I have been telling them think about AI as something that will help you to get stronger at what you do. So, for example, I tell them if you're not a good writer, write your document and then ask AI to give you a critique to help you be a better writer. That's actually a good use of it. Like it'll
Hmm.
give
Hmm.
you a really, but you have to ask it to critique you, right? Okay, another thing I'll say is if you're having trouble organizing ideas, but you took all these notes and you've got all this information, put your outline together and then it's okay to say to AI, can you take a look at this outline and tell me if it makes sense? And if it doesn't, can you tell me where maybe I should think about changing it? that's that's not a bad thing from my
Hmm.
perspective. It's like what I would ask a friend. Like
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would ask a colleague that. Another thing that I've told students is your voice is so important. Your human voice, it's beautiful, it's complex, it's messy, and it's imperfect, and that is wonderful. Like I
Hmm.
love that. Okay.
Hmm.
And so I don't ever expect it to be perfect. And I don't really want it. In fact, that's really boring. Like
Yeah. It
even
almost
my,
gets clinical. It's almost
yeah,
like sterile.
yeah, nobody wants that. I mean, even my own writing, I kind of love the fact that if I look at Grammarly, even though I've written 36 books and I put my own writing into Grammarly and it tells me all the mistakes I have. And they're just like mistakes of what Grammarly would like me to write like,
Hmm.
right? But maybe I like to be a little looser with the language and not as like kind of strict,
Yeah.
right? So maybe a little bit more personal or engaging. So I try to explain to them because there's so many, different AIs available that I try to explain to them, use it as a tool, but don't replace your human intellect. And also, with any tool, you need to learn how to use it. You
Hmm.
Yeah.
can't you can't just go in blind and not know what you're doing. So read up on things. Get some books about how to actually use it in productive ways. I don't think it's going away.
That's the fact.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going away. And then also I tell them, don't do your research. Don't trust AI. And if you do ask AI for information, you need a source. Say, give me a source. And then
Hmm.
Yeah.
look up the source because it is a quick way to get things, but
Yeah.
ask for a source because I tested it the other day, just like you did. I did this thing where I asked it to give me some quotes from a famous person. It made up two of them. Okay. And
Yeah.
I knew they were made up because I've done extensive research on this person. And I said, did you make these up? And it said, well, yes, I did, because I could only find one and I didn't want you to be unhappy. And I said, I don't want you to ever do that to me again. And it
Yeah.
said,
Hmm.
I'm so sorry. And it went on, right? But I normally would just look those up because I'm a historian. Well, my training is as a historian. So I would look those up in another source, but
Yeah.
students might not.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is like when I sit down and I engage with chat at a different level than maybe some do, but I give it very strict parameters, very very defined goals and targets, and then I tell it what it can do and what it can't do. Like
Yes.
don't well, so I was writing a book and I uploaded a chapter and it kicked back at a completely different document.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, 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 no, 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 no. I don't, you're not writing this for me. I
Yeah.
had asked it to, uh, it was something specific that I'd asked, and it basically reformatted the whole thing and took words and sentences out. And it's just like, so lesson
Yeah.
learned, right? But I, I look at it as if you know what your objective is and you know the
Mhm.
parameters with what you want to entertain inside of it, give it all of it, and be specific about what you are okay with and what you're not okay with,
Mhm.
right?
I always loved I think I mean, my God, it was probably over a year ago when we were talking a little bit about this, but a professor made the example, like, think of a calculator. A
Yes.
calculator is a tool. It makes life easier, right? But you have to know how to use it. You have to know what you're inputting. If you
Yeah.
don't know if you put garbage in, you get garbage out, right?
Yes.
If you look, that's how I really have always looked at AI, and it really hit home. Like, it's a tool. It can
Right.
make things better. It can do some things that maybe right off the top of your head you can't do, right? But you also have to use it correctly.
Hmm.
And that is, I think, just a great analogy. It's like the calculator has evolved to do more than just math,
Yeah.
right? And again, you think about the different levels of calculator. You got one on your phone, and then you get to high school, you got the Texas Instruments, the scientific stuff. Like,
Right.
it
Right.
becomes more complicated. You might need a class just to use that tool, right? So just what you were
You are
saying, like
right.
that, the
Yeah.
idea of AI to me is that use it as a tool, but know how to use it correctly. So to get the right, get what you need out of it.
Right.
So back to your sort of world for a second, because I think this will put a cherry on this whole thing. When you give an assignment, it could
Hmm.
be a massive one, it could be a small one, I don't know, and
Hmm.
AI is going to be used,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When do you lean in and say, here's what I want you to do, here's how I want you to use AI, or are you one of the, like, don't use AI, I'll catch you if you do? Like, how do
Um,
you view it?
Well, I'm gonna come out and say that I am going to lean in, and
Oh,
because here's what I want to say. So I'm on Sunday I'm going to be 58 years old. Okay, February 1st. I'm 58 years old. So I've lived through the onslaught of calculators, computers, um, the World Wide Web, right? And I remember each of those times people. Oh, let me just say one other thing. DVDs and streaming,
oh
okay?
yeah.
I remember MP3s, all of this stuff. I remember people saying, "Oh my God, movie theaters are going to be gone. Oh my God, computers are going to take over. We're not going to have anything. Oh my God, calculators, all the students are going to be dumb." I remember all of this. The World Wide Web is the end of the world. It's the devil. I read all these. I went back and read all these recently. It's really, really funny to read them. So I don't think like that. I think this is a tool. These students are going to have to know how to use this tool. So, like, as an assignment, I might do something where I say, like, I give them a topical area. I want them to explore that area. I want them to, let's say, think of a topic first, ask some questions about it, and then maybe I'll have them answer the questions first in class with their pens. Okay. And then I'll have them go to AI and see what AI comes up with. Like, so they'll take a look at how and then do a paper maybe where they compare their answers to the AI answers and critically think about the differences between
Mhm.
those. I think that's an interesting thing to have them do, to look at their own brains and their own knowledge in comparison to something that's, doing something in a second and scanning everything. So I might have them do that. I might have them, if they're doing a research paper, give them some prompts that they could use AI for. But I'm also going to say, here's all the things that AI is going to do that it's just not acceptable. Here's how
Mm.
AI writes. Like, you don't want to write this way. There are certain patterns that it has. It's picking up patterns that are out there. And by the way, like, at this point, I I know that most of my books have been put into AI by publishers. So, like, if you look in my area of expertise and you ask questions, it's written like I write. I'm just letting you know. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it sounds like me. In fact, it was jarring one day when I noticed it. I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds just like my writing." So I explain all of the things that they need to be looking out for and being critical of, and then I stress voice. Like, your voice is important. Your
Mm.
imperfect voice is important. And your unique perspective is important. And the thing about AI is it's not a unique perspective.
Mm-mm.
It's like a communal perspective
Mhm.
that it's gathering. there's nothing wrong with that. You can put that as one perspective and then look at your own perspective.
Hmm.
And also, I have them critique what they get from AI in class. Do you see?
Got
In
it.
in
Yeah.
class, yeah. And I think that's okay. I mean, again, it's not going to go away.
No.
It's not going away. I mean, average humans are just thrilled about what they're doing with
Yeah.
it. And some of it's really scary, some of it's really funny, but some of it's really scary. And
Yeah.
I think the more we can help people be critical, and I don't just mean criticize, I mean like just be critical thinkers about it, the better. So I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to do that. But
Awesome.
I'm not going to say I'm in the majority of faculty, okay?
Yeah. I
So,
understand.
yeah.
Well, when you were going through, the first thing that popped into my head was, from a job perspective, if I'm a business owner and I have candidates, or I have employees, and I have one that is getting all the jobs done, and everything that I need from them is being completed very well, and I have somebody else that's struggling one way or the other, right? Or there's somebody that stands out more. And if the sole reason that that person stood out is because of how they utilize AI, not saying it's everything they do, but they use it as
Yeah.
that tool, well, now I'm going, well, this is a better employee,
Yeah.
right? And so if colleges, when you were kind of getting into it, like you're not in the majority of how professors feel, well,
I'm not.
you're going to have a level of employees that know how to use this tool, and others, if they're told they can't use it, are going to be at a disadvantage in the future.
Hmm.
It's not going away, and if it can make you better at a way, and you know how to use that tool, you can stand out from the crowd. You can
Mhm.
You
stand out
can.
against your competitors. I think that's, again, it has to be used right. You can't rely on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about it, that was the first thing that was going through my head. Like, man, one person that goes through 4 years of education, like, great, you know how to think, you can be good. But if somebody else had that same basis and this extra tool that they know how to use, they're probably going to be better at that same job.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't,
And one thing I was going to say too that I've told students, and I feel this way myself, is I think AI is the best thing that has ever happened to busy work.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because why are we spending our precious time on earth doing busy work? It's who wants to do that? So I have told them if you can come up with ways to use AI for busy work, all the power to you. Because why are we doing busy work? That's not enhancing our brains. It's taking away our creativity. So yeah, I think that's the greatest part of it thus
Yeah.
far. Get
Hmm.
rid of busy work. So,
It's
yeah.
it's funny you made the comment about the jarring experience of sort of getting your own
Yeah.
tone and
Yeah.
Yeah.
vibe, for lack of a better expression, back. I was in a deep session. And I was in college. We were talking about college planning, and I was going back and forth with AI, and I have the entire transcript because it's freaking marvelous. But
Uh-huh.
at the about the third question, I prompted back, and I was basically using it as a research tool to tell me what it knew about what I do.
Hmm.
And it's smart enough to understand who I am,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
can go
yeah.
on the internet and know I'm a CEO of an organization that's been involved in this for a very long period of time. And it finally comes back and says, "Well, why don't you answer that question for me because you're the expert?" And I was like, and I had not like I did at this point I had not interacted in a way with it where I told
Uh-huh.
it all of that of what
Yeah.
Oh,
I
it
was,
knows though.
but
It
yeah.
knows. Yeah.
And so then I started giving my perspective, and it is like it I felt like I was in Short Circuit, the movie with Johnny Five, need input. Like it was just sucking knowledge from me to turn around and utilize. And so that is a quite a jarring thing when you're like, wait a minute, this technology is now using me as opposed to me using it,
Hmm.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read an article in a media outlet the other day that I could tell was written with AI because I knew that everything that was in there I had already written and it was in my voice. And it was about something I'm an expert on. And I sort of chuckled. So what I did is I went on to ChatGPT and I asked it the question that was the overarching question of the article, and it spit out almost exactly what was in the article.
Hmm.
Not
Crazy.
word for word, but
Yeah,
the
it
exact same
rewrites
ideas.
it freshly, but
Yeah.
it's pulling the same
Yeah.
knowledge base, right?
Right. And it also, the other funny thing about AI is it uses limited words. So what I've noticed, and I can pick them up in newspaper articles now, it uses the same words over and over and over. And it doesn't matter what your level of education is. It uses those words as if they're coming out of your mouth. And
Hmm.
Yeah.
so, whereas some words, there's just no way you would use those unless you had a PhD, or you're reading constantly,
Yeah.
Hmm.
because they're not words that are in like general vernacular,
Yeah.
so it hasn't realized that people are different, have different levels of education, have different ways of talking. I mean, I guess you could train it, you could feed it tons of your work, I guess, but then that's going to be all out there, by the way. So,
Hmm.
Yeah. Correct.
yeah.
To kind of bring, and tie it a little bit back to, some of the conversations we've had, but as you kind of said, you're in the minority about leaning into it.
Yeah, I am.
As far as high school students right now, to me, I mean, my oldest is only seventh grade, but I know when I go on a college visit with him, like that would be a question, like where does, I would want to talk to some potential professors, maybe if he's got a major, like, hey, how do you guys lean into the AI? Where do you stand? Like, I feel like that's an important question. I might gauge between a couple different colleges. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think professors would be open? Do you think schools have that might be a good question to ask when you're visiting colleges, kind of get the deeper dive?
If you're interested in that as a young person, I think you should ask. I will say that the majority of colleges are creating programs if they don't have them already.
Hmm.
So they are, it's moving so quickly though. I just, keep that in mind. I think if you're in the sciences, you're definitely going to get that. You're also getting some in the social sciences, like things about critiques of AI and interaction with AI and psychological issues in AI. I mean, because there's so many, people are befriending AI,
Yeah.
and that is a psychological issue that, we need to talk about. So, because I think a lot of people are really lonely, quite frankly. I think people are very lonely, but
I've
um,
seen it.
yeah, so, I would definitely ask that. I think depending on the major, you're going to get more engagement. I'm in education. There's some engagement, but there's not the level that you would get in the STEM fields, right?
Hmm.
So you should definitely ask those questions. It's very interesting though, because I talk to a lot of young people. I'm talking nonstop. I'm talking to young people, and some of them absolutely don't want anything to do with it. Others are curious and are trying to figure out how to use it for their own interests. Others are trying to figure out everything and anything that they can do to advance themselves, because we have a very entrepreneurial group of young people right now as the
Hmm.
result of TikTok and Instagram and all of the kinds of things where people have learned to make money.
Yeah.
So but it's all different, right? But college students have always been like that. Some of them, they're very diverse in terms of their intellectual pursuits. So, but yeah, you should ask the questions. I believe that you should ask for what you need in life. Like,
That's
like
that
what's the,
self-advocacy, full
yeah,
circle right there.
yeah, yeah. What's the saying? Closed mouths don't get fed.
That's
So,
it.
so ask for what you need. And, you were talking at the very beginning about kind of the show and what you typically talk about. And I always tell people, go to the college that has what you need in order to get where you want to go, and that loves you back, that loves you back, like that wants you there, that is excited about you. Don't
Hmm.
go to a college just for the name, and really doesn't have what you need, and doesn't really care if you're there or not. Go to
Yeah.
a college that like really really wants you, because that will change your life, and it'll completely change your life. And if AI is where you want to go, look up where AI is really prospering at colleges and go to those colleges. That's
Hmm.
that's what I would tell somebody.
I just would want to add to that, like, you also have to make sure that the college knows who you are for them to fall in
Yes.
love with you. It doesn't
Yes.
just
Yeah.
happen. Like, there's got
Yeah.
to be some effort, a little bit of research, visiting the
Yes.
school, talking with recruiters. Like, there's some work that comes to that, but that can go a very long way where it's,
Full circle right again. Let me
yeah.
Yeah.
something I want to wrap up on because this is huge. We talked about networking. We
Hmm.
talked about all that, right? And I had a consultation yesterday where they had gotten some terrible advice in the admissions environment that not to submit scores and not to worry about that, not to worry about this. And I said that it was all wrong. Ended up getting waitlisted at a lot of places, deferred and rejected from a lot of places. And I said to him, I said, college is no different than any other interview, admissions experience you're gonna get in your life. That job opportunity, that interview that you do, the connection you make with the human on the other end. I said at the end of the day, in 90% of these application processes, there is a person on the other end that is either an advocate for you or they don't care about you.
Yeah.
And you make people advocate for you by engaging with them. I
Yes.
tell people, like, if you go to a college campus and let's say I came to your school and
Mhm.
I saw you out in the green and I was like, hey, can I ask you a question? And you sat and talked to me for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is, I would figure out how to get a thank you note to you, period.
I'm there with you. I would do the
Like,
same thing.
Hmm.
and at the end of that, what will happen is you've got an internal advocate. They may not be able to move the needle incredibly, but golly, if they have one friend in the admissions department or they have
Mhm.
one person, they
Hmm.
can just send a note. I just interacted with this remarkable student. If they apply here, consider them. Like, now I've got two advocates at that school. I've
Hmm.
got the person who's friend, like, and that is
Yep.
networking.
Yeah.
Like, that is
It
the
is.
original version of it, right? So when you go to that college fair, and you have a good conversation with someone, take their business card, shoot them an email, thank them
Hmm.
for their time, engage in a way that makes you seen and makes the school have an opportunity to fall in love with you,
Yeah.
right? Because and this is the crazy part that has been really since COVID, we've noticed it in a large way. But the idea that you are like, you're not just a statistic unless you want to be just a statistic, right? You're not just an admissions number unless you allow it to play out that way, right? And I've seen people with all the credential, and this is the COVID part, all the credential, all the scores rejected because they treated that school as though certainly I can get in there and
Yep.
my numbers are top of the top. But that school got a hint from a unopened email or from a lack of following through with a particular portion that is an indicator to them that you would have real interest in going there. And they said, we're not going to do that because we're trying to get our yield numbers in line with where we want them, right?
Yeah.
Enrollment management is the grand scheme of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then I've seen people that, like, I'm like, ooh, you applied there? Like, I don't, that's a stretch. And they went and they created a portfolio of themselves. They found the person they could deliver the portfolio
Right.
to. They
Right.
they interacted, they engaged, they flew down to the campus, they talked to three people while they were there, they booked appointments, and they get into a school that they otherwise really weren't qualified for.
Hmm.
And so I've seen more people get rejected from schools that they think they should get into, and more people get into schools that they thought they had no shot at because of the way they network in this whole thing. And so it's huge.
Yeah, and I think, parents need to understand the game has definitely changed, especially from an admission side. But parents, think about, I mean, going back to, real world jobs, like, think about if you've got, you're hiring for a spot. There's one spot that you got somebody sends in a resume. Somebody sends in a resume. Then you got the guy or a woman that comes in and says, I wanted to introduce myself. I learned a lot about your company, saw that you had this posting. I was hoping I could talk about it before I officially submit my resume to make sure it's the right fit for me. Yeah, that's that little extra mile that all of a sudden, okay, yeah, you know what? Here's my resume now. Like, I hand it to you. That has a different effect than just upload a resume through some website.
It does. It really does. And
College admissions is not
yeah,
much different, guys. They think
it's
about it that
true.
way.
It's true. I mean, this season is the time of year when PhD students are chosen across the country, and
Oh yeah.
I have to tell you that I love it when somebody reaches out to me in advance and says, "Hey, I really want to work with you. Here's my work. Would you be willing to take a look at this? Don't assume, but would you be willing to take a look at it? Am I somebody who you might want to engage with?" And I love when a student does that because I remember their name. In fact, I keep a little list of all of them.
Yep.
And then I go back and write comments about, my engagement with them. I go back and read the emails and see how they are. I will tell you something that's really interesting because you think that students are so casual now, right? But I find them to be, at least at Rutgers, I find them to be incredibly polite,
Mm,
like incredibly polite. I actually find them, they students contact me from all over the country, and they're wonderfully polite, and I'm very impressed with them. Sometimes I think they get a bad rap,
yeah.
but I find them to be just kind of delightful in terms of the way that they interact with me. And I find that they
ChatGPT.
ask for what they want, and you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't know. I think they're great. What did you say over
I
there?
said, oh, it's ChatGPT they're using
Oh,
to make
well,
itself
it
sound
might
nice. No,
be.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It could be, but you know what? I love when ChatGPT writes to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, and all this full circle, right? What you just described is PhD students
Yeah,
networking to get into the program, PhD
yeah,
candidates, I should say, to get
yeah.
into programs. It doesn't change, right? And
No, not at all.
I was hiring for someone to do video market and sort of produce for us, and I went through I don't know, probably 25 interviews, and everybody had their story, everybody had their stuff. And two people after the interview sent me like a thank you note. And when they sent the resume, they sent the cover letter, which was like, and the cover letter, people think it's like something you've got to do. No, 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 no. The cover letter should be expressing you in
Yeah.
like why you're interested in the role. And then the thank you note is just a courtesy. And those are the two people that get called back. And I end up
Mhm.
hiring the one girl that sort of followed through in a professional manner, not because she was more qualified than anyone else, but because she took the steps that got her the job. And so like it takes what it takes. Nick Saban, fantastic football coach, the man, he got up on the podium one time and he was talking about Alabama and their championship football team and what it takes. And he said, it takes what it takes to win a championship. Like I'm not going to tell you that it's the hard work. I'm not going to tell you it's the grind, the lifting, it just takes what it takes. It takes all of that stuff. And so I look at it in terms of admission, whether it's undergrad, whether it's a master's degree, whether it's a PhD, it takes what it takes to get where you want to go. So do yourself a favor and take it seriously, right? And put in that effort to get there. Because if you don't, you may still be successful. You may still find your way. You may still end up, but you didn't do it because that's where you wanted to be,
Mhm.
right? So again, I think to wrap it into the networking thing, I think is awesome because networking as a concept gets a bad rap or gets an uncomfortable feeling to it. But networking is it's just cherishing the interaction for the
It
value
is.
that you can give
Yeah.
it and you can get from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love when students follow up with me, like especially like sometimes I'll have students who've like worked with me and then years later, 2 or 3 years later, they'll follow up. They assume I can't remember their name, which I always do, but I love to hear about them. I love, knowing that they're going to apply for their next job, right? And that they might want a reference. And I think like that kind of networking is really, really good. I've been a professor for like 20, this is my 26th year. I have students from my first year that I'm still writing letters for. Do you understand? Like
That's awesome.
they're because they kept in touch with me over the years. They send me their new resume. You know what I mean? They give me an idea of what they're doing. Those are really good skills. That's a
Yeah.
good
Mhm.
skill to have, and like I was just thinking of this for jobs. One of the skills that I love to see in people is people who remember little details about people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because for me, like if I get on a call with someone who I haven't seen for a while, and the first thing I say is, "How are your children?" Or, "Hey, I remember the last time we talked, and you got to take notes for this, but you said blah, blah, blah. How's that going?" That goes so far with people. And that's like a trick of networking, like
Yeah.
really learning how to remember small details about people and not making it all like business, business, business. I need, 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 need. How are you? Like,
Yeah.
I think we should teach people to do that more. It's
Well, it's funny too
powerful.
because Joe and I meet with a lot of families, and we'll sit down and go, I can't, what was that last name? Like I can't remember them at all. And then we'll go back to our notes and we'll have written that one thing, and then whoosh, it's like
Yeah.
a washover of they were the ones that they had just moved from here to here, or they had this dog, this puppy that was jumping in and out of the screen, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
stupid little details. And to be honest, it saved my career remembering details because I can't remember names. Like and I try and I know you, and then I'll go into I'll be trying to figure out how I can figure out their name, but I remember the details, so I can have a conversation with someone, and it may come off disingenuous at times because I can't remember the name, but I'll remember the things, the little things, and I'll be able to have an intimate conversation without that. So I love that point. Something else I wanted to just hit home for the listeners. You're a professor, and I
Yes.
find people in general, when asked for help, want to help. Like I think that's a human condition. Like
Oh, yeah.
we don't want to not help, right?
Yeah.
And if at my level where I am or where you are, you can help that person that took that step to ask that question, you're going to do it.
Yep.
And so for all of the listeners, like as you get into your undergrad, as you get into college, don't be afraid to ask for the help. And I'm not talking about mental health, yes, but it's beyond that. Ask for the help to get to where you want to be,
Yes.
because 9 times out of 10, that person will bend over backwards. If it's not a huge ask, like, hey, can you loan me $50,000 and get me a job like that? But hey, would you be willing to write this letter? I've rarely have I found someone that says, no, I'm not doing that.
Right. And, that's another thing that my mom told me when I was younger. She said, you should always ask, because the worst they can do is say no. And then you just ask someone else. And I think that for me, I love it when people ask me. I love helping people because someone helped me.
Yep.
So I'm always going to do
Pay
my
it forward
best to help. Yeah, I'm always going to do my best to help. And if someone says no, they say no. Just move forward and let it roll right off your back. That's that's how
it's
I
the
do
same
it.
result if you had never asked, right?
Yes,
So like the
it
worst
is.
case is you're right in the same situation you were in. So, and that's huge because
True.
I do know this as a sort of a young person. There's a fear of asking sometimes,
There
right?
is.
And
Yeah.
that's something that I've tried to just train right out of my children. And I use the word train
Yes.
because like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
won't order a meal for them. I won't talk for them if they want something. Like even if they're embarrassed and they're like hiding behind my leg, hey, you want it, you gotta do it. You have to have that sort of intestinal fortitude. So
That's an incredible skill for young people, is to what you just said. Even if they're hiding I used to be the hide behind the leg kid, okay? And you gotta push them out there, and if they want it, then that's how you get things in life, is you have to ask. So that's a really good skill.
money transactions as well. Like my kids, they want something at Wawa, or they want like you're transacting. I literally use the word you're transacting. You have
Yeah.
to put it on the counter. You have to give a salutation. Hello, how are you?
Right.
Like you have to do the monetary exchange, the thank yous. Because I don't know. But it's the hope for me is that my kids are never afraid to ask for anything.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. And sometimes they'll really surprise you at what they do ask people
Yep.
for, and what they do come back to you and say, "Hey, I just wanted you to know I did this." And you'll just be floored that your kid who you hid behind your leg is
Yeah.
doing things. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions
I'm
for you,
good.
Joe?
This was a lot of fun. I really
thank
appreciate
you.
today's show and being on a lot of the great insight. And yeah, this was a fun conversation today.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving us the perspective from graduate school back down and sort of looping it all together, because that's huge.
course.
Not everybody's going to go to graduate school. We're not professing
Yeah.
that they should, but the idea is that it's not a lot different, right? It's
No.
more it's more of the same, and then when you get to the employment, it's more of the same. So, fantastic episode. Appreciate your time so much, everyone listening. This is Dr. Marybeth Gasman from Rutgers University's Graduate School of Education. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Thank you.
take care.
And until next time, guys, tune in for another episode of College Knowledge. Until then, be safe, be strong, and be sane. All the best.
All right.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, good
All
stuff.
right.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
You two are like the Kelsey brothers.
Listen, if we only got paid for it,
I know.
maybe someday.
I know. Well, thank you so much. This was really fun. Okay.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All the best. So it hit me. Hold on. Yeah. Yeah.
Your question was